Hello, and this is Christina Simmons with the Leadership Catholic Puzzle, and I'm back again to talk about the next piece of the puzzle on our journey together, and it is strategic planning. I really enjoy strategic planning because when we start to do this, then we start to be able to see the big vision, and we can see how it's starting to come together, and we can see going from the kind of the intellectual, this would be great to do, into the practicalities of seeing it really come about. So there is a macro part of strategic planning and there's also a micro. And so I'm going to be talking about that as I talk about strategic planning. And then the next three puzzle pieces are time management and coaching and accompaniment, and finally assessment. And all four of these together are necessary in order for us to have that 11th puzzle piece come together, which would be integration and that synergistic, creative collaboration that we want to have happen. But we have to have each of these pieces. So this is what I'm going to be focusing upon as we go through over the course of the next month or so. Is focusing first on strategic planning, the macro piece, and then we'll start talking about what are the micro pieces, and that, of course, are that time management, the coaching accompaniment, and assessment, which all have to be a part of the strategic planning process. If we don't have those, then we're not going to have that efficient utilization of resources so that we can accomplish the mission of the whole. And if we're not able to accomplish the mission of the whole, then, what's the point, right? So strategic planning's purpose is to achieve the mission of the whole, to be able to prioritize effectively so that we have efficient utilization of those resources, primarily time, talent, and treasure. So time, is pretty well understood. Talent is the effective utilization, the best use of your people, which is your best resource, and then treasure. Most people focus on treasure, money, because they're like, well, if you don't have money, then you can't do anything. And I would actually argue and say, if you use your time and your talent well, which doesn't take money, then you're going to end up having all of the money that you need. But that comes from a place of knowing that God is in charge. So in ministry, strategic planning in particular, is about a reliance on the Holy Spirit. So what we're trying to do in order to achieve the mission is to use the resources that we have efficiently, but also bringing them to bear so that the individual, the care of the fullness of the individual is brought about, so that we can then be striving for continuous improvement in the midst of that. And this is where time management, coaching accompaniment, and assessment comes into play. So we don't want to not have this understanding of the importance of strategic planning in mind, and why it's so important to take the time to do it. And I'll speak more about that in time management. But the fact is that if we do not set aside the time to do the strategic planning, then we're just going to be hamsters on the wheel. We're just going to keep going and going and going and going. And we're going to again get discouraged, and we're going to wonder, why isn't anything being different? Well, because you're not doing things differently. You're not using all of what you have, all the resources well, and you're not trying to bring about improvement in an intentional way. So we can't be doers, rather we have to be leaders. And if we are leaders, then we're going to be not focused, if we're going to be leaders, then we're going to be focused upon outcome and relationships rather than completion of tasks and busyness. In other words, just because you're busy doesn't mean that you are actually being productive. And this is probably the hardest thing for us to understand in our world today, which values busyness for itself. In fact, we give ourselves badges because, well, I've got this, I've got that, I got that, da 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 da. And that's not how we're supposed to go through life. We are supposed to go through life intentionally. We're supposed to go through life with an intentionality and with the ability to be able to prioritize the things that truly matter. And so often what happens is that we don't do that. So one of the biggest things of when we start to go about strategic planning is that we have to be very intentional about making sure that we are focusing upon the outcome and about the relationships in the midst of striving for those outcomes, not just the completion of tasks. The completion of tasks will happen in the midst of pursuing the outcome and in the midst of relationship, but that can't be the only metric. And again, we'll talk about that in assessment. But strategic planning is all about giving people responsibility, authority, and accountability. We so often will miss the whole part about accountability. And in our world of you do your thing and I do my thing, accountability is probably the most difficult one. And that's why using creative metrics and assessment, can really break through all of that defensiveness that we tend to have in the midst of our relationships about, accountability. And we're not just using deadlines. We're not just using, did you complete the task? But rather we're looking at what is the outcome? What has come from, from all the work that's been done? So in the midst of that, what we need to do as we're doing strategic planning is that, again, we have to cast the vision. We have to remind people of what the mission of the whole organization is. What is it that we're about? What is it that we're trying to do? For example, in my own parish, our pastor, speaks about our mission, our vision is to worship, evangelize, and serve everyone within our geographical area so that they can come to know Christ and become disciples of Christ to the fullness that God is calling them to. So we have this before us of how is it that what we're doing is going to bring about this vision, this mission. How is it that we're supporting worship or evangelization or service? How is it that we fit in? So that's a big piece. And as we're painting the vision, and we're inviting people into the implementation of it. And this is where we have to pray. We're going back to the evangelization cycle I talked about, many months ago, of where we're praying and we are inviting as we are casting the vision. Then we have to invest the time and the trust, and we have to empower them. This is where we're giving them accountability. We empower them by holding them accountable. And we do this through training. We do this through the process of strategic planning. We do this as we are looking to say, okay, what are the things that we need to do? And then how are we effectively utilizing what we have in order to accomplish those particular goals so that we can accomplish and achieve the mission? So we do that. And then as we do that, we're giving them the tools, we're giving them whatever training they need, we're giving them whatever support, and we're holding them accountable so that we're helping them be able to see, have they reached the standard or have they not? Have we achieved the vision? Have we achieved the mission or have we not? And what needs to be done in order to retool and to continuously improve so that that vision becomes more and more of a reality. And that means that we accomplish that mission. In the process of doing that, we're going to be celebrating wherever it is. So it's kind of like celebrating. So I'm an endurance, long distance endurance athlete. And so it's an accomplishment to go from nothing to doing a 5K. Now, is that having done a marathon or an Ironman yet? No, but you have to celebrate the wins along the way. And so making sure that we're attentive to that in our strategic planning, that we are celebrating, and again, providing support. So we're putting the person over the task. So it's not about, okay, did you do the task? No. Well, why not? And we're always asking the question, why? Why did something not happen? So we can use a very simple assessment tool like SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, in order to address that. But we're always asking the why, not the, black or white, did it happen or not? We cannot do that, because then we're not prioritizing relationship, people, over what it is that we're doing. And finally, is that time of evaluation, that time of assessment, that time when we are going, okay, this went well, this did not, and how are we going to get better, so that way we can get that much closer to achieving the mission. So again, strategic planning is all about helping everyone, no matter what piece of the puzzle, within your organization that they're responsible for, to achieve their mission by helping them prioritize the events and activities and programs and processes that they need to be doing, so that then anyone who's involved in what they're doing is going to have that personal encounter with Christ from a ministry perspective, and being able to live out a life of missionary discipleship. If you are in the business world, then you're focusing upon, okay, how did that person become more capable of being able to do the task that we are trying to teach them, and then being able to teach the task to others, for example. So there's, it's all about, though, what has to be prioritized, what has to happen. So it can't just be about, okay, well, we're doing all these things, but it's about prioritizing them. And this is what strategic planning does. It is, again, it's about achieving the mission, but we do it through prioritization, efficient utilization of the resources, so that the resources are brought to bear, so that the person is totally cared for, and in the midst of that, continuous improvement. And the process has got to be one of where people are given responsibility, they're given authority, and they're given accountability. And we need to do all of those things so that our strategic planning process is going to truly achieve what we wanted to, which is to help the entire whole be able to accomplish its mission. So again, strategic planning is something that we have to prioritize for ourselves. We have to make sure that we go about it. Otherwise, what happens is that we'll just keep on the hamster wheel, and being on the hamster wheel is no fun. So when we do strategic planning, it seems like it's a lot. It seems like, oh my goodness, this is like additional work. But what happens is that it then creates the space for you to focus properly upon the tasks that have to be done, and then things move along even better towards you achieving your vision, towards you achieving your mission. So one of the things that I wanted to invite you to talk about is, do you do strategic planning? Do you do this in your own life on a personal level? Because if we don't have the practice of doing it in our own lives, then it's even harder to go and implement that in a workplace that maybe might or might not have strategic planning at its heart. If you have strategic planning at the heart of your organization, at the heart of your life, then you'll be naturally moving into this idea of, okay, what is my mission? What's my vision? Where is it that I'm going? What tools, training, do I need in order to move towards that? What are my, who's holding me accountable for being able to do this? Who's responsible? I have authority for how I manage my time and resources. And am I celebrating and supporting people in the midst of that? And then again, is that assessment, so that then we can duplicate what's good and set aside what is not and get better at it. But all of these practices, again, we need to be doing in our own personal lives. And then when we step into the workplace, then we'll notice when it's not there, or if it is there, it will be something that we truly rejoice at. So, again, this is kind of the macro part, and I gave you a couple of micro pieces of strategic planning today. And we're going to get into more in-depth detail and discussion about the pieces that support strategic planning, which are time management, coaching and accompaniment, and assessment in the weeks ahead. God bless.